Welcome to Disrupted by Distributed Ledger. In this podcast series, we share thoughts and insights of outstanding trendsetters in the blockchain world, as well as the rollercoaster rides of their companies. Hello everyone, so right now we have Faeez, the CFO and co-founder of LuxTag. Hi Faeez, how are you?
Hi Shazza, how are you? Thanks for inviting me here.
Thank you for being here with us. So, just an introduction about LuxTag and blockchain. So what would you say blockchain in a one-liner to intro? Because I'm sure that when you meet people who are not in blockchain, they'll be asking you, Faeez, what is blockchain? What do you usually tell them?
Usually I would try to tell it in the less sexy way, but you could say the more factual way.
Mm-hmm.
Blockchain is a distributed or decentralized ledger technology, which is append only linked by cryptography.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say append only, it means that you constantly add new information to the database, and you cannot be, you could say, modified. It's cannot be changed and manipulated by other parties.
So usually you go technical on it.
Yeah, I'm straight up technical.
Straight up technical. All right, sure. So what are the basis, the principles or values behind blockchain technology?
So the principles, I would say, the technology in itself has, before even Bitcoin, which is the technology behind, the technology that is back, or the first technology of blockchain, right? The technology has been around for a while, where it's actually, because blockchain is a combination of different existing technologies. Things like a peer-to-peer network, which already exists in, like, if you know uTorrent, for example, like a peer-to-peer network. Cryptography, which is used in emails, in a lot of different sectors of the industry. And yeah, so the principles of the technology in itself is a combination of existing technologies.
What would you have to say about the misconception of blockchain just being Bitcoin or cryptocurrency?
I would say it really depends on, you could say, the incentives behind people who are searching about the technology in the first place. Because if you compare in a statistical point of view, if you like Google Trends, for example, the difference between, you go to Google Trends and see how many people search for Bitcoin and how many people search for blockchain. The difference is almost, you could say, 90-1, the difference. So you can imagine that most people are actually searching for Bitcoin rather than blockchain. And the reason to this is because the incentives are monetary in nature, and which is something a lot more people are interested in. They think of investment schemes, or thinking of the way to make money, quick, short, and see how the growth of the digital asset in general. And blockchain is a more boring, but actually a more relevant part of that aspect of technology, which is how it can actually impact different sectors around the world, with its ways of removing intermediaries and making things more decentralized, but also more auditable, accountable, and more transparent.
Okay, what would you think is could be the bigger impact of blockchain in the future?
I would say the bigger impact of blockchain is the whole principle of decentralization or disintermediation, I would say. Currently, in how the way we structure ourselves as societies or businesses, right? We base ourselves in some form of intermediary in order to manage interactions between parties. You could imagine, let's say you have Grab, for example, right? Grab, you could say, connects, or you could say, drivers with passengers, right? So you have Grab in between, and Grab take a hefty chunk of 30% from the drivers or the amount of money they make, right? And this goes in hand in hand in a lot of business models out there, where they payments such as PayPal or Western Union, or even banks, where they are actually connecting lenders and depositors, right? So the whole idea of having intermediary in between exists because there's a need to build trust between these different parties and connect them together. But what happens if, for example, in the digital world, you're able to connect these things and remove, and those things that are in between is a system, and the system doesn't need to make profit. The system maybe requires minimal cost in order for it to operate because of expenses, costs, and so on. But it requires minimal cost, and that brings huge benefit to both parties, because it makes economics in general becomes more efficient because you connect people who need services and people who provide services, and you remove intermediaries who are actually have an incentive to make profit and increase its cost in between, right? So that's actually, if you think in principle, that's really powerful, whether it's for businesses, for governments, for individuals.
But what would you say the how, because there's a removal of intermediaries, so there are also people who are taking advantage in terms of crime, like scams and schemes. How can these be, so to say, avoided, or where can the authority come in terms of avoiding all this within the blockchain itself, because it's happening, and some may not know which is the right one, which one is a scheme, which one is a scam, and which one is real. So because as you said, it is, you remove the intermediary. So what would you say? Is there any solution to this right now?
So I would say it's a step-by-step process on 3 levels. First, of course, working in the banking sector itself, we work closely with regulators. My background is actually from banking and stuff, right? So regulators need to step up and still be the one in charge in terms of providing proper structure, regulations, SOPs in order to ensure some form of accountability, transparency, those basic idea of protecting consumers at the down level, right? That's the first level where we still need regulators, although you could say the powers are reduced, and because of the advance of technology, the way how they need to manage things becomes much more complex. They need to step up and be able to understand how it impacts and balance it out between in providing regulations and how does it impedes innovation. Trying to figure out that balance is something that's part of, you could say, part and parcel of a regulator responsibility. And second level is what I see in terms of how industries need to be able to self-regulate themselves. That's why you have associations, blockchain associations. If you look at like Malaysia or Singapore, where they even now in Singapore, for example, they are providing some form of regulatory standard to self-regulate themselves amongst the members, right? So you see in that sense, you provide some form of way to ensure that the legit ones are able to slowly remove these fraud schemes and all these things, work together even with the regulators to make them relevant and unable to do business in effective way, right? And thirdly is, of course, as the market matures, right? As much as we have seen the rampant problems of people fundraising or doing fraud schemes using Bitcoin or any sort of other cryptocurrencies, is that the market slowly matures and understands this problem, and also people who have been scammed also will understand that hey, there's actually something more behind this, and it was due to my understanding and so on. So slowly and surely, I think that education will come to light, and although some people are learning it the hard way, I would say, but I think it's better than not learning it at all. So in a sense, slowly we'll become mature, understand and be able to differentiate which ones are fraud, which one are legit, and that's, you can see how a lot of markets sometimes work.
Has the support of the authority, especially in Malaysia, looking promising for you?
I guess first when we started off, like say, when I was started off in the blockchain in crypto space, I've been around with the crypto space for almost since 2013. So that's been quite a while. I wasn't really that optimistic. I mean, to some extent, I would say I was expecting them to take a very long time making decisions, and the kind of rhetoric that comes is always like, it's not legal tender, it's not gonna be regulated, blah blah blah. It's like, oh yeah, the same thing all over again. And we're looking at markets where people are more proactive, trying to come up with regulatory structure, trying to regulate exchanges, doing some form of regulatory report and research on what cryptocurrencies is from the side of regulator. So I was expecting that to be a bit slow in Malaysia, but technically, like now, I would say I was wrong, right? I would say that especially now recently, the governments are proactively making decisions that, hey, we're going to regulate ICOs, hey, we're going to have proper regulatory structure when it comes to digital currencies. And I think that's a very huge step in the industry, not just for Malaysian industry, but in the perspective of the global industry in general. So because a lot of countries are taking a very, very, as either avoid, I could say, a very, where they avoid dealing with cryptocurrencies in general, or take a very harsh stance where they completely want to ban cryptocurrencies. And we were working more in a way, hey, how can we adopt? And that's very good in the innovation perspective as we are running a business.
So there's certainly a proactive step forward here right now.
Yeah.
So, okay, coming into the company itself, LuxTag. So if you could just give us a bit of background of how is it founded and what do you guys actually do?
Okay, so basically we're actually a bunch of, tech geeks. Back in 2016, we're actually just part of like a tech community group who's pretty much active in the, crypto space, right? But we've seen, we gain more interest in terms of the technology behind it, which is blockchain. And we've seen there are a lot of relevant use cases. And we want to bring that to the Malaysian, especially in the Malaysian industry, because that's what at the time where we're based at, right? So we want to see, a growth of real industries on the ground. And that's when we decided we want to start to explore something, and we start like a brainstorming. We already have like a rough idea of what technology we're going to be based on, how we're going to build it. So just looking at industries, and we decided, maybe we should start with luxury sector, and that's how we started LuxTag, where we started to think of the ideas of we can use the technology to tag luxury products, create a digital representation of these products, and this can do a lot of things, especially prevent counterfeiting, creating some form of provenance or digital history, and so on. That's how we started off.
Maybe you could actually explain a little bit more of the process of how the blockchain can actually prevent counterfeit, especially in luxury products, as you were mentioning.
Okay. So the process, I would say, at the point of creation, because when it was made by the manufacturer, first, of course, you have a blockchain platform running on the side, right? So when the manufacturer creates this particular, let's say a watch, or let's say a luxury watch, this luxury watch would have a digital ID. We usually have like their own ID, like serial number and so on. From this serial ID, we create, let's say, a QR code, or maybe a RFID tag which contains that similar ID, or maybe an NFC card, right? So we just put it on the physical product of that particular watch, right? And from the creation of this digital certificate on the blockchain that we generate together with the manufacturer, this is then transferred throughout the supply chain from, let's say, the manufacturer, this digital certificate, or you can imagine almost like a token, like a Bitcoin token that is backed by a physical product, right? This is then transferred to a manufacturer, to a distributor, to the customer. And from this first customer, let's say the first customer who got the product, they can simply scan this particular product and see where does it coming from. It comes from the manufacturer, when was it made, because all this information are backed by blockchain, right? So all this proof given there, even the timestamp is immutable. Where is it coming from? It's immutable. So all this information are backed by a digital history that cannot be manipulated by any other parties.
Do they need like a certain app or something to scan, or is just a normal QR scan? What type of scan is it?
They need a certain app which we provide. It's either we customize an app for a customer, or they can just use our app. Reason being why they need this particular app as well is in order to prevent something called phishing attack. If you just provide, let's say, a normal QR code which leads to a website, people can create a fake website. So you just scan a QR code leading to a fake website. So if you provide, like, say, an app or like a web application stores in the manufacturer's website, then it's harder. It's actually very hard for them to do a phishing attack, because customer will always go to the right source first, right?
So do you think currently being in business starting up in 2016 until now, so do you think that the larger brands, especially because we're talking about luxury items, for instance, if we talk about watches, so are the forefront of luxury watches like Rolex or Audemars Piguet looking into blockchain being applied to their to their products,
Um,
or even
Definitely.
handbags for that matter? Maybe an MS who wants to do blockchain.
Yeah. Even now, actually, there's quite a number of luxury product companies that are actively scouting blockchain. This type of blockchain companies that can create, because they can bring their physical product to the blockchain space. For example, if you know recently, like Hublot recently is a very prestigious watchmaker, which now creating their own blockchain watches. We ourselves, we actually partner with Chronoswiss, which is also a very prestigious Swiss-based watchmaker, in which we were the one who create this digital representation, these blockchain watches for their special edition watches. So and I'm not surprised that as we move to this industry, it will become almost like a standard to have, you can say, a blockchain certificate or a blockchain token to represent your physical product, because it provides a lot of different benefits, whether it comes to analytics, when it comes to prevention of theft, whether it comes to way to provide authenticity of products. So it's a very powerful use case when you use blockchain.
So what does LuxTag actually aims to achieve? Actually, perhaps, I don't know, Malaysia or Southeast Asia, or even in the world. So what is your main vision?
Currently, how LuxTag operates, we explore a lot of different verticals. Other than luxury products that we were talking about, we actually have done projects involve like university degrees, where we work with the education Ministry of Education and provide, like say, a platform for universities to issue their degree certificates. We're working with apparels, with some companies based in the US, to tag some of their, we could say, their clothing lines and so on. We've worked with so in a sense, we're looking also at pharmaceuticals and then a few other verticals in that space, right? FMCG and so on.
Okay.
The way we explore, we plan is at two levels. We focus a lot in trying to, you could say, build our IP, our technology, and be able to license it out to other partners or other parties that involves to you say interested to build this technology on top of it. So you can imagine almost like we're the main tech provider, and we teach and we outsource our SDKs, those kind of applications, APIs, and so on, and they can build similar applications that we will provide. So that's the first level. Second, we're actually planning to open like an open access platform in which we have different tiers. People can even try our technology for free. In the long-term perspective, why we're doing this is in order to first set up almost like a change in industry in the perspective of why would you have in understanding like why you would want to blockchainify your physical product. This provides a lot of different varieties of different use cases for example, in terms of providing digital history, whether you want to prevent counterfeiting or do you want to build some sort of legacy to your physical product. And that's the basic idea. We want to almost like change or set a standard to different forms of industry that might wants to use blockchain in their business.
Another part where I'm sure our listeners would be curious as well, as you were mentioning, thinking about applying blockchain in their business, in their products. Is it expensive to actually apply blockchain?
I see. For us, it really depends on the level of security you want your product to have. If you want like you could say cheapest possible, right? It can be less than 1 cent actually. The answer would be, the right answer would be like really depends on the volume, but it can be less than 5 cents per product or 1 cent per product. So you can imagine like the simplest ID you can put in the physical product is just to put a sticker of a QR code there. That may be like 10 cents, maybe less than that, right? And in the sense, you already create some form of digital ID, or if, for example, you already have a ID written on your product, but you can do that as well. But of course, there are limitations in terms of security then, because people can simply copy a QR code, people can simply copy a serial ID. So we have different variations that we deploy to our customers. For example, like non-copyable QR codes or RFIDs with better encryption, and so on. So So the permutations is endless, and the costs would just simply decide
Mm-hmm.
the level of security. But even then, you still have
Yeah.
a lot of benefits,
Mm-hmm.
even with minimal costs.
So it's not like it's a scary cost to invest in. So yeah,
Yes.
glad to hear. Okay, so for LuxTag itself, what would you say was the smartest move so far that you guys, since you guys have operated?
I guess the smartest move we made so far is being a startup, you always need to be a bit more nimble in where how do you explore your business. So when we started, we started as a luxury product tagging, right? And as we progress, we found that especially in the Malaysian context, it's really hard to build a brand around and promote and really get good partnerships with luxury brands, especially when you're coming where luxury brands are not really we don't have that much producers or luxury brands in Malaysia, right? So what we decided is to pivot a bit. So we built a brand around a lot of different industries. We work with governments, we work with private sector. We actually, even you could say, almost make education almost like a part-time job, trying to get build a platform and promote ourselves whether locally and globally. And from that direction of pivoting a bit to our business model, where we expand to a lot of different verticals, we're actually able to secure a lot of different projects. And the interesting part is because from this, you can build a lot of understanding of a lot of requirements of different projects.
Yeah.
From there, you can start focusing on building a product that's far more scalable rather than focusing on
That's
industry.
really interesting. So are you guys actually looking into as well, perhaps since you're in Malaysia, like food, luxury food, for instance, like it could be in the sense of like, what do you think about durian, for instance, or even like bird's nest, or anything that is like, like the favorites of Malaysian that, that is usually being exported out as something that is really expensive, but it's food.
Yes, definitely. We actually have been approached by, like, for example, projects like Bird Nest and so on. But I guess, like, in terms of implementation, it just takes a bit of more time. We're quite open with different kinds of industries, and the whole point of why we explore these industries is really to really sit down with client, build customized solutions, understand what the kind of problems they need to solve, and from there we actually use this knowledge that we learn to help develop our future products, and that's a very learning experience for us as well.
Oh, that's really interesting. So where did things get tough for you guys? So since you have operated, what are the biggest setback or challenges that you face?
I guess for us, right, being in a blockchain space where it's still quite a new industry, right? There's a lot of interest from different parties. What we've learned is, overall, although there's a huge number of interest, and concurrently, even right now, we're running like more than 10 projects at one particular time. And you can imagine that kind of intensity that requires, to manage like a lot of different projects and so on. So I would say that the tough part is really about managing and trying to figure out which project makes sense commercial wise, and really trying to think of a way to build a more long-term scalable product. Because currently we're operating almost like a software house currently, and we're still at that point of time where we're still learning, but at the same time we need to start stepping up and move away from just focusing on projects. And some of these projects, you could say the type of negotiations are quite intense. Sometimes the commercial value is quite challenging as well. And also throughout this whole journey is really about trying to build the credibility as a startup, trying to fight because you get projects that makes us more credible in a global perspective, right? So those are things I would say that are still we're still learning along the way, and we're getting used to you could say prioritizing and managing different kinds of projects at the same time.
So it's like the team is also growing. The team is growing.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So where do you want your company, where do you see your LuxTag will be in for the next couple of years? And can it possibly achieve the impact or the, where you want to be in the market?
See, if you ask me, I'm always in it for the long term. Like I said, we're really focusing on trying to build a scalable, long-term, sustainable business. We really want to actually be able to explore build ourselves as like a blockchain expert that is supplying different technologies or different services to other partners, in which these partners can also deploy to their own customers and so on. So you can imagine like we work together with software companies or brand protection companies and so on. So that's where with the idea of building a platform with different variations of the technology, things like building APIs or SDKs so people can deploy our solution to their customers. Those kind of things makes a lot of sense. So in the long-term perspective, we want to have, a large user base of people. They don't even need to know about LuxTag, but actually they're using LuxTag technology in their products, right? So those the idea that we target maybe like 500 million or maybe 5 million products out there in the market are actually using LuxTag as a standard of physical tagging on the products. Right?
Definitely, we're looking forward to seeing that. And let's just say, if there's one person who can help LuxTag grow and help with your mass adoption of blockchain technology, who would you say that would be?
I would say.
I mean, you can have two, if not one.
I mean, I guess like for us, the way we see it, I mean, rationally, of course, there's not going to be one person who can do everything, right? I would always like to see people who talks a lot. That makes a lot of sense to be that person. But to be a bit more, I guess, be factual, I guess people who are leading countries, perhaps maybe Tondo Mahathir would be an evangelist of this kind of technology, right? Because this technology doesn't just bring remove intermediaries, but it also brings greater transparency. And I think for a new Malaysia, those are the things that we're really looking forward to. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So perhaps as a closing to everything about LuxTag that we've spoken about, how can people know more about LuxTag and where can they, find you?
Okay. They can easily just can check us out at www.luxtag.io. We actually even have a YouTube channel, which we actually shows like about some of the products we deploy, some of the demos of the products that we do, Medium posts and Twitter, those things. Just go to LuxTag official, LuxTag_official. And of course, just feel free to email us, info@luxtag.io. Yes.
All right. So that's LuxTag, everyone. Thank you very much, Faeez. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the insight.
Yes. Thank you, Shazza. It was a pleasure being here as well.
Hope you have a great evening.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. This podcast series is a collaboration between EFM of Global Entrepreneurship Movement Association and Access Blockchain Association Malaysia. For more insightful conversations, find us on efm.live.